I'm Brian Klein. I'm the programming director of Pride Alliance, and we're a group that does event planning, social and political networking for the GLBT community. And we're really glad to see you all out here today, friends, allies, strangers. And just as an introduction, we've prepared a little sheet of information about a lot of the current laws in the U.S. regarding gay marriage. Hopefully these are dispersed throughout. If you don't have one, try to look on with a neighbor. And just a little pitch, this Saturday is our annual gala, and it's a chocolate theme, 9 p.m. at Holmes Lounge. And tickets are free for all WashU students, so you should all show up.
Okay, so just another little announcement. This event is part of the countdown to the dedication of the Duck. So if you'd like to see a full list of events, they are on the back of t-shirts, which are over there. So if you'd like to grab one on your way out, feel free to do so. And now I will move on and introduce our moderator, Jordan Abel. Jordan is one of the co-founders of Controversy Coffee. He's a WashU student in Arts and Sciences. And so I will let Jordan move on and introduce our panelists. So thanks for coming, everyone.
Thank you. So starting at all of your right is Father Gary Braun. Father Braun is a priest in the Archdiocese of St. Louis. He was ordained for service to the Church of St. Louis in 1977, and in May 1991, 18 years ago, he was invited by Archbishop May to be the director of the Newman Center at Washington University. Next to Professor Braun is Professor Appleton. Professor Susan Appleton is an expert of family law. One of her recent publications is Missing in Action, Searching for Gender Talk in the Same-Sex Marriage Debate, which was published in the Stanford Law and Policy Review. Next to her is Professor Tanya Edmond. Professor Edmond serves as the Associate Dean of Academic Affairs in the Brown School of Social Work, and her research and teaching interests include violence against women and practice effectiveness. And finally, closest to me is Mr. Mike Brown. Mr. Brown is part of the Campus Life Office here at Washington University. Specifically, he serves as the coordinator for LGBT student involvement and leadership. So, it seems to me that at the heart of this debate are the questions, what is marriage? And what spheres of society should marriage be limited or extended to? So I'd like to ask, from your perspective, what defines marriage? And should marriage be kept in a religious sense or extended beyond? Take it away.
Okay. I'm Susan. I can start. So I've seen a number of different definitions of marriage, particularly in recent cases about same-sex marriage. Some of these cases recognize that gays and lesbians ought to have equal access to marriage, others don't. But one definition that emerges is that marriage is simply a personal commitment between two people that the state recognizes. Another definition is to say that it's an institution designed for the purpose of procreation and child rearing, and that it's a legal mechanism for tying men to their biological children and making sure that support for dependency, that is, children and the women who have children, is privately assumed rather than becoming a taxpayer responsibility. There's certainly religious definitions of marriage and religious sources of marriage. Actually, my favorite definition of marriage, or description of marriage, is one that Nancy Cott, who's a historian, suggested in her book Public Vows, A History of Marriage in the Nation. She says that marriage uniquely and powerfully influences the way differences between the sexes are conveyed and symbolized. So far as it is a public institution, it is the vehicle through which the apparatus of state can shape the gender order. So I think marriage is really about preserving our definitions of men and women and gender. And so I will start there.
But this is always one of the interesting things for me because I'm a lesbian. I've been out since I was 18. I'm 46. I've been in a committed relationship for 20 years and consider myself married. But this has nothing to do with my scholarship. So I listen to Susan and I'm in awe because she sounds very professorial, and I will not sound professorial about it. It will be coming much more from my personal lived experience rather than any form of real expertise or scholarship. So for me, this is an interesting time as a lesbian because I never really expected to see us be anywhere near this topic. had many discussions about whether to do some kind of commitment ceremony, and if we did, what that would look like. And early in our relationship, my position on that was this is just a replication of patriarchy, and there's no rational justification for the queer community buying into this oppressive structure. So I had a very kind of radical feminist orientation to marriage and was opposed to it. My partner had been in a heterosexual marriage for 8 years, and I think had some very romanticized notions of marriage, and was bringing those values and conceptions into the relationship. I didn't see it as a necessary structure to sanction the commitment between us in any meaningful way. So we had years of discussions about this in our own relationship. You know, when I thought about marriage, I thought, well, you know, what would that look like? So since it's not a legal or religiously endorsed option for either of us, then, you know, we both like to hike. Would we be exchanging some sentimental vows on a mountain or by the sea, or, you know, so it's very romantic. And so how would that be different just than being on vacation and saying how much we love each other? So it was a very interesting thing. So that's really was my standpoint early in this relationship, and had been for many years. We ultimately decided to do a commitment ceremony on our 7th anniversary, and it was really a profound and remarkable experience. It was tremendously powerful to have our friends and family there to support our relationship, to affirm our commitment to one another in a way that I could not have anticipated. I was really quite stunned by the how powerful of an experience that it was. And quite frankly, the majority of our friends that were there were straight, and they were all sobbing, saying it was the most beautiful wedding they'd ever been to. My redneck brother from Mississippi, former Marine, who I disagree with on almost every political position you can have, was saying it was the most beautiful ceremony he'd ever been to. So it's been an interesting journey for me. So now I find myself feeling more not radical, but much more fervent in my belief that the gay and lesbian community should have access to this legal opportunity. I don't see it as a religious institution, although I know that it has its roots there and it can have that implication. I think that should be resolved within each faith tradition. I don't think that we should enact laws that would require anyone to pursue a marriage that is not congruent with their faith tradition. But because we have separation of church and state, I don't think that the religious community should dictate what our civil rights should be. So I find myself kind of in a very different position than I was many years ago, and feeling very strongly that the gay community should have access to marriage.
I mean, I think there's something really interesting about the question, which gets at the way that this conversation is structured a lot, especially in the media, which is that in really, I think what we're talking about, when we talk about marriages, we're talking about two different institutions. We're talking about civil marriage, which governments, you know, have some sort of say in, and they structure and sort of give construct to and meaning to. And then we have religious, social, cultural marriage, which is a different thing. I grew up in Reform Judaism, and I think like when I was in probably 3rd grade, I remember the Central Reform movement decided that rabbis could, perform same-sex marriages. Essentially, they were going to sign a ketubah, which is a religious, a Jewish contract, which essentially says these, as far as we're